This has not happened since a friendly in 2005, but the long arc going back 60 years to 1966 is really where this rivalry begins. And honestly, that first match changed the way soccer has been played.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. So one of the world's greatest sports rivalries is having a rematch. We're going to explain what is at stake in the Argentina-England semifinals on Wednesday. Plus, we have 12 states suing to block the Paramount-Warner Bros. Merger from coming to a theater near you. We're going to hear why California's Attorney General thinks the merger could hurt you. Up first, though.
Get ICE out! Get ICE out! Get ICE out! Get ICE out!
Protests are growing in Maine after ICE agents shot and killed a Colombian man on Monday. And there are a lot of questions about this incident. So I want to get right to NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent, Julia Ainsley. Hi, Julia.
Hey, yes, thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So what do we know about this incident according to your reporting and any accounts that we have heard from folks that observed what happened?
Well, as we now understand from Telemundo and from people who we've spoken to at the Colombian consulate, this man was a 26-year-old Colombian father named Joan Sebastian Guerrera. ICE officers had the address and description of a target they were looking for. They arrive at the residence that they're targeting, where they believe this address has been tied to their target, around 7 a.m. Monday morning in Biddeford, Maine. And they see a vehicle leaving that address. And the officers thought that the man driving the vehicle matched the description of the target. We now understand that was not the correct person that they were to be looking for. All we know is, and we can see in the video, a small white car driven by this man, Guerrera, that appears to be going rather slowly, almost making a U-turn, while there's a larger white vehicle nearby that we believe was operated by ICE officers. Then we see a man holding on to the door of this vehicle as it's driving away, and he fires a shot. He's on the side of the vehicle. He's not in front of it, as we would have seen like in Renee Nicole Good's death in Minneapolis when the ICE officer was at the corner of the vehicle. There's a question about whether or not his life might have been at risk. This man is holding onto the driver's side handle the whole time before he fires the shots. Then he pulls Guerrera out of the car, and that is where he dies. What might sound, unfortunately, typical about that is an ICE officer once again using his or her gun to stop someone who they're trying to arrest while they're driving a car. What's not typical has been their response. It took 12 hours for DHS to get out a statement. They did not say that this officer fired in self-defense. They just said that he was fearing for his life and fired off a gunshot. They did not say that this man was using his vehicle as a weapon. They just said that he tried to flee the scene. Those were kind of key differences, where usually ICE has run to the side and the defense of their officers in every one of these situations. And then another thing just happened that really changes, I think, the calculus and how this administration and this DHS and ICE are responding to this incident. And they have put a pause on all vehicle stops. And someone I spoke to said it is so that they can evaluate and decide whether or not ICE officers need more training in how they do vehicle stops, so that they, because of the negative outcome of these incidents. And so they're talking about this and another fatal shooting involving a man driving a vehicle in Houston just last week. These incidents happened within 6 days of each other. So not only are we witnessing something tragic happen, we're actually witnessing a course correction for ICE, which under this administration is kind of rare.
And to be clear, the ICE officer that pulled the trigger on this individual, that ICE officer is where?
We would assume that he would be on administrative leave, as is typical anytime a federal officer fires a gun and is involved in any kind of lethal force incident while the review is ongoing. That does not mean an admission of guilt. That does not mean any kind of criminal charges or anything. They're always put on leave when that happens. It happens in local police too, as well. But that person, we do not know his name at this point, but it is clear from the video that appears to be a man who is an ICE officer.
And his telling of the events was what? That the car was pursuing him, was weaponized against him?
The only way I know anything about his telling of events is that I interviewed a witness who said that this man spoke to him briefly on the way out and said, he wouldn't stop his car. He was coming at me. And that was the way this witness, this neighbor, described it to me. But that is not a firsthand account, and ICE and DHS have not shared anything about what this man has said.
There have been reports, and your reporting indicates this as well, that ICE has been increasing their arrest quotas. How has that pressure to meet these quotas potentially played in to not only this shooting, but the shooting that you mentioned happening just 6 days or so ago?
Well, I've talked to some former officials who have worked under this administration, as well as current officials, who say that that is the reason why we're seeing these deaths, that they're under enormous pressure, enormous stress. ICE officers are not getting the time off that they're requesting. Many are working 7 days a week. And they were told in late June that they needed to increase arrests to 2,000 a day. Some days have gone past 2,000. Just on Monday, when this death happened, there were over 1,400 arrests per day. Sure, that's under the quota. They're still under stress to get more up, but that's double what we were seeing just before this quota came in late June. This quota came in part from pressure from Stephen Miller at the White House. It was also imparted by the acting director of ICE, David Ventrella, telling ICE officers around the country, we're no longer in this surge strategy anymore, where we're going to take people from one city and move them to another. But they told all 25 field offices across the country they needed to be increasing arrest, and to do so really by whatever means necessary, meaning they don't need to just focus on criminals. They don't need to just focus on sanctuary cities, but to arrest immigrants, particularly those with final orders of removal, as a priority, because they have more information on those people anywhere they can, and to get those numbers up. Because there was a sense that the days of Kristi Noem were over, but they didn't want a Mark Wayne Mullen administration to appear as if it had really dropped the ball on this huge priority of President Trump's, which is for mass deportation.
After the killing of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pretty in Minneapolis, ICE had instituted policies around wearing body cameras, but ICE agents were not wearing body cameras in the Houston shooting. They've also, as you mentioned, just issued this nationwide order around pursuing people in vehicles. What are the protocols in place right now? Why is it the ICE officers weren't wearing body cameras in this Houston shooting?
So they do not have a mandate. Trump ended the mandate that the Biden administration started for all federal officers to start wearing body cameras. Trump ended that the day he came into office. And Mark Wayne Mullen has said after those shootings in Minneapolis, he would like more ICE officers to be wearing body cameras, but there's no mandate or funding mechanism that went along with it. And yes, they did have the money to fund this. They've blamed Democrats and debates on Capitol Hill and the shutdown of DHS earlier this year for why they weren't able to run these out as widely as they wanted to. But at the end of the day, there was no mandate. Trump ended that mandate. And now we can expect, they say, within 45 days of the last shooting last Tuesday in Houston, that more officers will have these. But in terms of whether or not they're mandated to wear them, we don't know yet.
Julia Ainsley, thank you.
Thanks, Yaz.
So if you were following the bidding war over Warner Brothers Discovery last year, you may remember the whiplash. Paramount and Netflix, they were battling it out. And after a lot of back and forth, Paramount actually won out. And then last month, the Justice Department also approved the Paramount-Warner Bros. Merger. But now 12 states are suing to block it. They say if this merger goes through, just 4 companies would control 85% of all the wide release movies in the United States, and that it would lead to higher prices for movie tickets and for cable packages. Paramount is saying that the lawsuit, quote, distorts settled antitrust law and is based on a misrepresentation of competition in the entertainment industry today. But is this going to stop the merger? And if the lawsuit fails, what is that going to mean for all of us? So for that, I want to bring in California Attorney General Rob Bonta, who is leading the other state AGs in this case. Attorney General Bonta, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
So you are part of this group of attorneys general that have filed this lawsuit. This is not the first merger of its kind in Hollywood, and likely not the last. Why draw the line here?
Well, this is a $110 billion proposed merger. It is the biggest proposed merger in the history of Hollywood. And it's not just because of the size. I just say that to share the scope. It's the fact that it's illegal. That's why we draw the line. And it's illegal because it violates long-standing antitrust law that's been on the books for over a century. The Clayton Act, Section 7, which says that if a merger will substantially diminish competition, in a specific market, then it's unlawful.
So you're saying it's illegal. You cited the reasons why. The Justice Department has signed off on this merger. In a statement you released alongside this lawsuit, you said, quote, America has no kings in government or our economy, but 20 countries and regions, including China and Australia, have also approved the deal. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the DOJ has signed off on this along with other countries while you're saying it's illegal and filing suit?
Well, first, the U.S. DOJ is sadly and very unfortunately completely missing in action when it comes to antitrust enforcement. They have long had a traditional role to play here. Through Republican and Democratic administrations, the United States Department of Justice has led in enforcing antitrust law fairly, firmly, and the Trump administration has no interest in fairly and firmly enforcing antitrust law. The career attorneys in the antitrust division of the United States Department of Justice do. They think that this is an unlawful proposed merger, and they're right. But the White House has overridden them, and that is typical. That is on brand. That is exactly what this administration is and who it is and how it's been behaving.
What about the other countries? What about China and Australia?
Completely different markets, different geographic markets. They have nothing to do with the United States geographic market. They can assess the potential antitrust impacts of this proposed merger in Australia, in their country, in the UK, in the EU, and they can come to whatever decision is appropriate for them in their market. They are not looking at the United States of America. That's our market. That's where we're looking.
So let's talk about the potential impact here, because you said in a statement that the merger is going to lead to, quote unquote, less content for film and television and also harm movie theaters. Paramount CEO David Ellison has said that he is committed to releasing 30 movies a year in theaters after the merger. That is close to, if not the same number that the studios Paramount and WB are releasing combined this year. So if Ellison sticks to his word, are you still concerned about the potential impact for this consolidation?
It's a big if he sticks to his word. I don't think anyone thinks he will. Anyone thinks he can, or anyone thinks that it's a realistic commitment. It's a good thing for the head of Paramount to say, if you want the merger to go through, it's completely unenforceable, it's completely unrealistic, and history shows it won't happen. Look at the Disney-Fox merger. They immediately reduced the number of films that they produce, the amount of content and output. This is going to harm movie theaters. It's going to harm cable companies and satellite dish companies, and it's going to reduce output, reduce quality, and raise prices. That's what happens when you have corporate consolidations like this in an already concentrated marketplace.
The DOJ said in June that, quote unquote, the transaction is not likely to result in harm to competition or American consumers. Along with that, Paramount released a statement saying, quote, this transaction creates a stronger competitor against dominant streaming and technology platforms. I mean, the reality is that media is, growing weaker and weaker across the board, that in the future, it's likely many of these companies, in order to survive against the competition like the Netflixes of the world and the big streamers, are going to have to consolidate, are going to have to merge. What is your response to what we're hearing from Paramount in their reasoning for this merger?
Yeah, well, let me just first address the US DOJ statement that it's not going to harm American consumers and it's good for competition and completely baseless, conclusory, and no rationale or reasoning behind it. The Trump administration has been very clear that they want this deal to go through. Trump likes Larry Ellison. He likes David Ellison. He wants to help his friends. That's kind of the beginning and the end of the analysis. Unfortunately, it's wrong for it to be that way, but that's how it is. And that's why people are pissed off across this country about this deal. It looks like it's rigged, and they want a free and fair market, not a rigged market. And for Paramount, they're talking about at Warner Brothers, the point you're making about the streaming industry. and the streaming market. That's a different market that we're not challenging. They want to talk a lot about that and their positioning vis-a-vis Netflix and Apple and Amazon, but we're not challenging that market.
Some folks would argue that this is politically motivated, considering what you have just talked about, Larry Ellison, David Ellison being friends with, close allies with the president of the United States, who in fact is, as we all know, a Republican. What do you say to that? What is your ultimate objective here?
Yeah, I mean, and the point there about the friends of the president isn't that they're Republican. It's that a deal is being approved because it's the president's friends. Regardless of the president's party and who the friends are, deals don't get approved because of friendship and because you want to pick a winner and a loser or help your buddies or help your friends. They need to be approved because they comply with the law, with antitrust laws. So that's the problem there. It's not that it's partisan. But to your point about the criticism, I got the same criticism with the over 70 lawsuits that we brought against the Trump administration. My position with the Trump administration is if he breaks the law, we'll sue him. If he doesn't, we won't. We looked at the antitrust, at this case as an antitrust case. We did the straight up antitrust analysis, and we determined very clearly, as set forth in our 40-page complaint, that they violate the law in 3 markets. And so we have 12 states across the country, all who feel the same. More states are already asking to join this lawsuit. And in the past, antitrust enforcement has been bipartisan or nonpartisan. Ticketmaster Live Nation was. Nexstar Tegna is. This case so far is not, but I know Republican AGs have voiced concerns, and if they want to join our case, maybe they will in the future.
Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So we are in the middle of World Cup semifinals mania. You got France and Spain. They took the pitch today. Then England and Argentina are going head-to-head on Wednesday. And that game, by the way, is getting so much attention because the rivalry between England and Argentina, it is epic. It is longstanding. It goes back decades, and it's going to be on full display when the athletes take the field tomorrow. So here to tell us all about it is Andrew Greif, sports reporter for NBC News. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Okay, so there are some folks that don't necessarily know this, very years-long rivalry between Argentina and England. Walk us through it. What happened here?
In one way, it's almost hard to define it as a rivalry because they haven't even played since 2005. Most rivalries, it's annual, sometimes multiple times a year. This has not happened since a friendly in 2005, but the long arc going back 60 years to 1966 is really where this rivalry begins. And honestly, that first match changed the way soccer has been played. You have to go back to the 66 World Cup. It's in England, a tournament that England went on to win. When Argentina and England met, an Argentina player was sent off, and he didn't understand why his foul was given by a referee because there was a language barrier. And so he protested. He did not leave the field, and he eventually had to be escorted off by police. And that change, they had no card system at that time. That change prompted the yellow and red card system that exists now to this day.
No way.
So that really is the start of it. And then you have to go through the years to 1986. England is knocked out of the World Cup because of the hand of God goal scored by Diego Maradona, very controversial, where he said, no, I hit this with my head, the winning goal. Video suggests he hit it with his hand on the way into the goal. You get 1998, David Beckham gets sent off because of a red card in a World Cup game against Argentina for retaliating. There's instances like this throughout every couple decades or so where it's not just a typical match, there's something extra that goes into it. And that's really, along with some geopolitics, what brings us to such a tension around this game.
And then Beckham kind of had his redemption, right, in 2002, where England won 1-0.
Yes, and that was famous for a call that was controversial. A foul was awarded, a penalty kick was awarded. The foul went against the current U.S. coach, Mauricio Pochettino. He was playing for Argentina at the time.
Wow.
And even to this day, he says, no, that English player, he dived. He did not earn that card.
Wow. Also, that is not to mention the literal war that was fought between those two countries, the Falkland War.
Yeah, that was what we were talking before, strictly on the field. But under the surface, the 1982 invasion of the Falkland Islands, just off the Argentinian coast, by Argentina. It sparks a 10-week war. Hundreds of people died, both British and Argentinian soldiers. And still, it's something that, even though it resolved in about 100 days, 4 decades on, it's still a hot point issue. Even last week, Argentina's foreign minister wrote an opinion story in an Argentinian newspaper where he basically called the population of British citizens there illegal and artificial, and kind of denied the idea that they want to be part of Great Britain. So it's something that is not ancient history. Argentina's coach was asked about that. This after they won to reach the semifinal, he was asked about that rivalry, and he very quickly shut it down and said, no, this is a game. This is strictly a football game. But I think tell that to people in the stands.
Right. And obviously the emotions going onto the field are going to be incredibly high. Then you think about the superstar, obviously Messi, playing for Argentina. This may very well be his last World Cup. The pressure that is on him to pull through, to win the World Cup in totality. Walk us through that.
I think that, if his tournament was to end in the semifinal, he could walk away with his head held high. He's tied with Kylian Mbappe for the leading scorer of the tournament, the Golden Boot race. He's played exceptional.
Sure, but he's going to want to win.
He is, and they already have won 4 years ago. So in some ways, he has delivered what Argentina expects. But this is not a fan base that is something that is satisfied with just one. This is this country that believes that soccer and excellence at soccer is part of its birthright. So I really do think that of all the 4 teams left, perhaps Argentina is playing with the most pressure on them. And if not them, then it's England, because it's been since 1966 since they won the World Cup.
Andrew Greif, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That is going to do it for us. Here's the scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you heard and you saw, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.